on that note, I'm going to start and just talk a little bit about ARG UK. I know most of you probably know all about ARG UK, but for those that don't, it was nice to have a little refresher. So this is about London ARG, which ought to be one of our biggest, boldest, brightest ARGs, but seems to have struggled. And Dave will tell us a little bit more why he thinks that is later. So the objective of this evening is to talk about what ARG UK does, what about the ARGs that surround London do, and how can we pull a London ARG together with mentoring and support from the neighbours, all of whom are here. So without ado, I shall carry on. So ARG UK, we're an umbrella organisation, a bit like a trade union for those of you who like trade unions. We represent the network of 37 county-based volunteer groups, all of which are independent, all of which have their own committee, which is a chair, and all of which make their own decisions. We manage the insurance, we organise meetings, we organise websites, we support with recording, and we're just there as a sort of, I don't know, if things aren't going so well. If things are going really well, we can cheerlead from the side. So the focus of ARG UK and the ARGs is native amphibians and reptiles. And whilst we welcome people who keep captive animals and exotic keepers, this is really the focus of what the groups do is about natives. So these are all the ARGs. I put this in just so we can see a little bit about the diversity. One of the watchwords for ARG UK is diversity. We celebrate diversity in all its forms, and everybody is welcome, and everybody is free to express themselves as long as they're conserving amphibians and reptiles. So, as I said, all of our groups share a passion for conserving our 13 native species, which isn't as many as other countries have, and isn't as many as other species group and taxers have, but they're still quite challenging. And I sort of think, given that a lot of them aren't doing very well, it's a shame that we don't seem to be making better headway. Anyway, so this is just a selection of the groups. We've got the Northwest doing brash burning. We've got Warwickshire group putting amphibian drain ladders in. We've got Somerset clearing out old ponds on the Mendips. And we've got the Hampshire group bottle trapping for great crested newts. So I'm just going to quickly whip through some of the activities just to have appetite. So we've got toad patrols. Now, in fact, toad patrols are coordinated by Frog Life, but a lot of ARGs also manage toad patrols. So it's a sort of partnership in a sense. And anyone that doesn't know about toad patrolling, it's in the spring when amphibians cross the road in order to mass spawn. Quite frequently, they do this straight after dusk at rush hour and on wet nights when drivers particularly can't see them. So very brave and dedicated people come out night after night and collect the toads and other amphibians in buckets and cart them across the road, thereby saving mass carnage. And this is just a picture. This is actually, I think this is from Crag, this one. These lovely ladies with their high-vis vests have been collecting toads in a bucket and thereby enabling them to breed. That's a Frog Life project. Other sort of slightly less mainstream, but quite a few ARGs have been getting involved with sustainable drainage systems. People notice that amphibians fall down drains, particularly these sort of gully pot drains, and then can't get out again. So a number of ARGs have got involved with looking at SUD systems and making amphibian ladders. British Herpetological Society have been supplying these, and people have been fitting them to enable the amphibians to climb out. Habitat restoration. Again, not all ARGs do this, but quite a few do. And these are sort of different sorts of habitat restoration. Again, we've got scrub clearing up in the northwest. This is for sand lizard conservation. We've got down in the left corner, we've got Somerset ARG clearing out their Mendip ponds. And the little girls planting hedges is in Pembrokeshire. We were trying to make connectivity for adders by taking very bare hedge banks and putting in some cover. Big thing we do reaching out to diverse audiences. I've said diversity is our watchword. That's diversity within our groups, but also diversity in the general public. we'll talk to anyone, but we like to reach out. We like to reach out to different age groups, different demographics. We do a lot of work with prisons. So we want everyone to share our joy and our passion and understanding for amphibians and reptiles. This is actually Oxfordshire Amphibian and Reptile Group doing Oxford Goes Wild in the Natural History Museum. And this is, I'm sort of expanding outreach and education. We do, as well as attending other people's events, we run events of our own. This is a BioBlitz we were at in Oxfordshire again, and going out to schools and enabling children to sort of have their first encounters sometimes with amphibians and reptiles. And I mean, this little boy was so chuffed with the grass snake. He'd never seen anything like it in his life before. So a big part of what we do is survey and monitoring. Now, this can be big or small, and Steve Langham is going to talk more about this, and so is Dave Willis later. This is Record Pool. This is our opportunistic recording scheme. And the idea is that members of the public or ARG people or anybody, in fact, if you see an amphibian or a reptile along the way, you can pop it onto Record Pool, and then the local group will have access to the information and be able to use it for conservation purposes. And it just sort of helps promote them, I suppose. So I'm going to say we survey for amphibians and reptiles, but we share our findings. We're very much about partnership. So we share our findings with land managers, local authorities and statutory agencies. So in London, we share with Giggle, and I think we're talking to the Natural History Museum as well. We also send record pool data up to the NBN Atlas once a year. So the data does get out there, so it is worth recording. And as well as collecting records through the online portals, we also do quite a lot of training and sort of hands-on engagement. Now with COVID-19, this is slightly had the brakes put on it, because we have a maximum of 2 people being out. And obviously if you're surveying an area with great crested newts, you need somebody with a newt license. So I think that's going to be a challenge once again this spring. So these are pictures from previous years, I should say. But again, you know, all the family can get involved. People absolutely love poking around with nets looking for amphibians. This little girl was overjoyed to see smooth newts, in fact, and water beetles. So I think it's something ARGs try and do. It's something virtually every ARG does, is run a couple of amphibian or reptile training events at some point during the year. So disease management and monitoring and reporting, this is very much in partnership with Garden Wildlife Health, which has also got, it's led by ZSL, involved with BTO, Frog Life and RSPB. We've been involved since 2011. We did the big swab, which was a way of looking for chytrid BD over the whole country. And the data that our volunteers produced has formed a bedrock of that sort of surveying. So I think, you know, we can be pleased with what we've done and proud of ourselves. And we continue to support Garden Wildlife Health by particularly reptiles. They're very light on reptiles. So any ARG member seeing a dead reptile, often it gets sent up to ZSL and post-mortem. And that's been useful, for example, mapping the spread of snake fungal disease. But I also think we're probably going to be in the front line if the B-cell, the new form of chytrid, comes to the UK. And I'm expecting it will be an ARG person that spots it first. So, and then finally, this is again, it's quite an old presentation, finding exotic waifs and strays. We do become the central point for inquiries. My phone rings most weeks with, I never quite know what I'm going to get. I've had a grass snake under a bookshelf in a head teacher's office in a local school that I fished out and relocated to the local nature reserve. All sorts of things turn up. Sometimes they're native, sometimes they're not. Most ARGs will help in some way, either by giving advice or by collecting, in this case, a rather fine green toad. And we're the sort of local go-to for amphibians and reptiles in that sense. So this is, I might invite Emily actually. Emily, where are you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you just quickly mention hang on, there we go. So the new Frog Life project. Well, it's not so new now, is it? Can you just explain what that's about?
Yeah, of course. So the London Toad project is the project I work for when I'm not just generally my personal life loving herps, and that is sort of a large public engagement project really that is just promoting identification and identification skills, particularly for the common toad. So from Toads on Roads data for many years, it's just seen that there's been quite a drop off in population numbers of common toads, particularly in the southeast. So we're just combating that by making that handsome little chap become a bit more of a household name. Essentially, it's quite a big project in the sense of sort of the geographical size of it. So it's anything within the M25 counts within the project, and it's a wide variety of different activities, echoing exactly what Angie just said about trying to talk to as diverse an audience as possible, really. If you're into creating textiles or tapestries or anything like that, we do a bit of that. We go into schools, and quite a lot of my time, which I love, is spent on allotments, teaching about identification of our species. So yeah, a lot going on. This is a map of what we've been up to. So we've been around now for, actually we're just going into our third year at the moment. So we've done about 300 different events or activities in the past 3 years in London, and that sort of, it covers quite a range really. Everything from, you may, if you travel at all through London, big train stations, you'll find our team there with pretty much a 7-foot picture of a toad, talking to people just a bit more about how they can better record them, or just let us know if they've got them around and how they can help them. But yeah, it's a little bit of a spread of what the project looks like on a map.
Fabulous. Thank you, Emily.
That's all right.
Okay, so there we go. London ARG, relaunch, new year, new start. And now I'm going to hand over. I've said I'm going to go around the M25 in an anti-clockwise direction so that I don't get lost. I'm going to start with Surrey ARG, and Steve Langham is somewhere with us. And
hello.
Share your screen. Can you, Steve?
I understand what's going on. Okay, what I was going to say was, if a London ARG starts up and relaunches itself, and there's help out here. There's a system we put together in Surrey and have rolled out called ARG Web, which helps ARGs sort of organise themselves and understand their data. At the moment, that shows the state of the rollout. So ARG Web currently covers 102 of the 152 vice counties. Nothing against Scotland, it's just we haven't rolled out there yet. And there's not too many active ARGs in Wales, and there's not much going on at all in Lincolnshire, and there's a gap here in London. And at the moment, we've got 1,700 users and nearly 500,000 records in the database. So you're not starting from scratch. Other things it can do for you is it will pull in all sorts of data. Actually, let me just put it onto Surrey. So that's the map of Surrey you'll be more familiar with. That's the shape of Surrey. But of course, originally it was a vice county. And as you can see, the vice county goes right up into London. So that was traditionally our area, and certainly where there was a vacuum of a London ARG, we did an awful lot in this area. Now we can pull up records. So for Surrey, these are our ADA records, a lot to the west. And any sightings you put into the system or into Record Pool or into iRecord or crop up on Natural England license returns or on the NBN will all turn up on this map. So it's very much a one-stop shop for seeing where your sightings are and where your animals are. Other things it can do, of course, is one of the griefs of setting up an ARG is actually managing your members, actually setting up a mechanism for managing them to PayPal. So you can set up a subscription for your ARG. They'll join via PayPal. It'll automatically update the database. It'll send them an email. It'll send you an email. It'll give them access to the website. And honestly, my job of just doing the membership every January, trying to herd all the cats, was a nightmare. Now it's completely automatic. I don't have to do anything to the membership. It just looks after itself. bloody wonderful. I'd have this just for that aspect alone. Other things it can do that would be useful is under amphibians. Let's see, there's a ponds database. Doesn't come fully populated, but in Surrey, these are all the ponds. There's 8,000 ponds across Surrey. We haven't surveyed very many of those 8,000, but at least we know where they're there. And we're looking to set up a scheme where local members can go and have a look at their local ponds and just give us a condition report of the pond. Also, speaking of which, somewhere, I think it's on the volunteers officer, you can do things like you can see a map of your members, because when they go into the database, they pop up. So you can actually see where you guys are. And I find this incredibly useful as an art. Really, really helpful being able to see where your members are geographically. And it'll do that for you. It does all sorts, really. There's the ability for you to save reptile transects down. So these are all the reptile transects we've got across Surrey. You can go to any individual one. Also good, well, we'll go for that one. It'll show you the site, it'll show you where the tins are. You can overlay species onto there if you're a surveyor going down there. You can download a GPX file, which you can put into a phone or a handheld GPS unit. That'll help you navigate to all the tins. There'll be site information that'll tell you, normally it's fuller than that, but it'll tell you what the goals are, any sensitivities, what animals have been seen there. And the other thing that's probably relevant, because I don't want to go on and on, is, oops, I just saw it, toad crossings. So these are our toad crossings, and Chandos, take that one. And we've got a little portal where you can add in toad data if you're a toad patroller, and you can see it build up a picture of activity. And since we were gathering toad information through quite a nice, easy portal, we thought we'd offer that across to Frog Life. And that led to discussions, and Frog Life will be sending us their entire list of toad crossing sites to incorporate into ARG Web, and they're very hopeful that we'll drive a lot of activity through ARG Web and deliver back to Frog Life nicely formatted data, so they don't have to deal with scraps of paper and spreadsheets and trying to mold all their data into a sensible format. It'll come to them in a ready mechanism. So this is just some of the bits and pieces I was going to really say that an ARG lives or dies on its ability to provide activity to its membership. If you don't have activities, members will come along, they'll get bored and they'll wander off again. And if you've got something like, or some of the functionality of ARG Web, you can put some reptile transits down, you can put some ponds down. When you get members in, you don't need to hold their hand. You can use ARG Web to help direct them to places to go and have a look at, and they can report their findings back. And it's been a great force multiplier for us. Certainly in the early days, we were capped to about 30 or 40 members, and we found it very hard to break out beyond that because of the amount of hand holding we needed. But being able to put some web direction in, it means that that limit's just gone now, and we're able to some degree interact with about 1,000 members, and people can go out and do their own stuff and help the conservation effort, and it doesn't need an awful lot of overhead time from a committee. So don't be too scared about taking up a committee membership position, because there is help on hand. I didn't really have much more to say than that, really. I'll field any questions.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any questions? I did see one about the 3-word thing. I think we might respond to that directly.
What's that? What 3 words?
Yes.
Yeah, we're putting in a module at the moment, because in ARG Web, because we have an issue that ARG Web was based on Ordnance Survey Great Britain, and then Ireland wanted to be part of it as well, and OSGB 36 doesn't work in Ireland. So we're putting in a module that will seamlessly translate between OSGB, Irish Grid, lat long decimal, and what 3 words.
Okay, that answers that. Thank you very much. Okay, right. Now, who is speaking for Crag? Is it Rick or Steve?
It's me.
Steve?
Okay, so Angie asked me to give a little brief report on what CRAG does, and also how anything we're doing which is linking into London. So firstly, I would say Angie, like CRAG, like most of the ARG UKs, does a lot of recording. It's the basis for a lot of the work that we do, and we analyse that work to work out for our conservation strategies what's going on. So it's not just collecting the records, but it's then using those records to work out how we can assist and how we can assist with conservation or help other groups or reports from there. So that's a big element of it. We also do training. You mentioned training there. Normally in a normal year, we would be gearing up to do some particularly great crested newt training at this time of the year, or certainly in about a month or two's time. This year, because of COVID, we've had to shelve that for the moment, but we're keeping an eye on where things are going, but I don't think that's going to happen this year. Similarly, tow patrols. We would have groups getting ready now to do tow patrols in about a fortnight's time and running through. But again, this year, because of COVID, we're not able to do that. But we're hopeful that next year things will improve and we will be able to get back to normal activities. We also help out the Kent Wildlife Trust. They have a garden program where they encourage people to look after their gardens for wildlife, and we were one of their first supporters, and we've been helping them for about 10 years now. We both sponsor an award that they do for owners that have got particularly good gardens for reptiles. We also give advice to their members and their volunteers and gardeners. We also attend their opening and closing ceremonies and give out awards. So we're quite well linked with them. Last year, we also linked with Kent Wildlife Trust, and we're going to start this year if COVID allows. Some people may have seen that the Kent Wildlife Trust have got a big grant to set up in a woodland around the Canterbury area a bison project, where they're going to release bison into the wood and help these bison, and these bison should help control and manage the landscape. Rick and Mike have been in contact with Kent Wildlife Trust since the autumn, and we are really pleased to be involved in this project. And in fact, when we had our AGM about a month ago, they came and spoke to it, and it was very well received. So that's going to be a big project this year going on, again, COVID sort of allowing. So that's the sort of activities we do. But Angie, you asked me to sort of look into anything that we've done recently that projects into the London area. A couple of things that we've done. Last year, we helped out the Chislehurst Common volunteers, where they were doing reptile recording, and they wanted a bit of help to set up, loan of tins. They also need a little bit of money as well. So we did that, and I think Rick was involved in a lot of the sort of helping and nudging that one along. So we've done that. A couple of years ago, 2018, we helped nearby Scadbury Park, which is not far from Chislehurst Common. They had a protection problem of a pond with great crested newts, and it was in a public area, and a lot of the dogs were going in and choosing to use it as a dog bath. And so they needed some help for funding to block off the access to the pond, and CRAG provided that grant for them. Also, the other one I'm pretty particularly well know about is the Bexley Heath area. There's a lot of heaths around there, and so there's quite a bit of reptile activity there. And one of our ex-committee members, Jason, knows that area very well. So if there are members in the London area that live close to sort of Bexley Heath and want to know a little bit more about the heathlands and how good or bad they are for reptiles, then get in contact with us and we can talk to Jason, and assuming COVID allows, we can look to sort of meeting up and assisting in that sort of area. The other thing that we discussed on the committee is we do offer a small grant of up to £250 for hurt conservation or recording or hurt promoting activities. Now, we tend to do this within Kent, but we've talked at the committee, and we would be happy to project that grant applications availability into the the West Kent Vice area, county area, that sort of links up into sort of South London, South East London area. So if there are members out there that want to start projects, then what I would suggest is if you go on our website, if you drop us an email, Rick will pick it up and we will be happy to consider any projects that people have got and to assist with grant applications. We've got a next committee meeting, I think on the 17th of February, but we will take them outside of committee meetings. So if there are members in London that want help with herp related projects for recording, for promoting, or for assisting in conservation, then feel free to approach Crag, and if it can help get things started and off the ground, then we'd be more than happy to do that. Angie, that's probably as much as I got. Rick, have I missed anything? Do you think?
No, I don't think so, Steve. It's comprehensive. Well done.
Okay. Gail, is there anything that you think I've missed as well?
No, I think you covered everything very well.
There you go, Angie. 10 out of 10.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, now I've asked Essex. Oh, hang on. What have Essex said? Okay, I don't think Essex are with us. Jim, are you there? No. Okay, so what Essex have said is happy to carry on verifying for London Area and Record Pool. Also do iRecord for Essex and London, and offer survey support for metropolitan Essex surveys as part of Essex Vice Counties. So this is much as what Surrey and Kent are saying, that if you're in the Vice County of Essex, Essex ARG will support you. The support could be experienced surveyors with own equipment who lend to largers, that's you, your largers, and possible financial support for kit, but we'd have to discuss with Chair first, which is fair enough. And then you might have sent me another email, but I can't find it. So basically Essex, as with Kent and Surrey, have offered good intentions and support, practical support. So I think if you're in that corner of that northeast corner, then that could be helpful. Okay, so if I'm going around anti-clockwise, the next county is Hertfordshire. Is that right, Dave?
Yeah, we're next door to Essex.
Okay.
Yeah, shall I share away? So what I've got here is just some suggestions, really, and some things to think about, a possible way forward. I focused on, thinking about this, the area north of the Thames, because the south seems to be really well serviced by Kent and by Surrey, far better equipped and set up than in fact we are. But I would echo what you say, Angie, about this. It does seem a shame that we've got so many people and in the area, and it's not quite the ARG that it should be. So I thought maybe it might be useful to think about some aims for what we wanted for any London ARG, and people come back to me in the chat, or just shout out if you think that any of this sounds like absolute nonsense. There was the Clare Atlas. I don't know who's familiar with this. The distribution of London's amphibians and reptiles that was done in conjunction with London Wildlife Trust back in 2012. And I think maybe that might be a useful starting point in terms of the excellent work that's going on with ArgWeb and things, in terms reviewing that and seeing what we've got, where, see if there's been any shift. We seem to have the capability to do that maybe even more easily than we did then. Help develop volunteers and membership. There seem to be, from tonight alone and from what's been talked about in terms of that Toad project, which sounds excellent, a lot of people who'd be interested in getting involved. And we seem to have the capacity, I'm glad to say, to identify and the willingness to assist in habitat monitoring projects. And we can do this, it seems. I've just sent a begging message to Steve Langham in the chat to kind of help out with a Zoom chat we're having with HeartsArg, and just sort of raise this awareness of the ArgWeb, because it really does look a useful tool, and I think we should all be using it. I'm not, and really should be using it much more. So we seem to have the structure there to take things forward. The area I was thinking about, Essex and Hertfordshire assisting with particularly and coordinating, was this. This is from the Crown Prosecution Service website, this map. So thank you. it just shows the areas that I would try. Speaking personally, I'd be happy to try and coordinate with some assistance and lots of begging emails and tearful phone calls to try and coordinate. It does seem there's a lot of support in these areas and a lot of willingness, and all these good things are happening all over the place. And it's like so many other projects and so many other things that we try to get going. Loads of people are keen, loads of people are interested, but they're just not quite tied up. And I hear the comment that was said about not having, if you have to have activities to get people involved. And I think if we can possibly start with a program of things for people to do and clearly identify this is what we want to do and this is why, in each of these boroughs, in each of these areas, supported by people and maybe by online offers of talks and things, we might start getting somewhere. Just off the top of my head, when I put this together, it just seemed to be an awful lot of people we can draw on, some of whom are here today with their contacts. The Natural History Museum, I know some people on the Zoom today have good links with them. I've contacted London Natural History Society. They're doing some really good talks and engagement events at the moment, and there seems to be so much knowledge and enthusiasm there that it just seems a shame we're not doing something more. I think Tom Charlton, I think I'm right in saying he's the county recorder. If anyone knows better, he's the London recorder for reptiles and amphibians. If that's wrong,
Yes, he is.
yeah, is that the case?
Yeah.
I have emailed him to see whether he'd be interested in getting involved. I haven't heard back yet, but I know Tom's a stalwart, so I'm sure I will. And there just seems to be loads of people, local education providers, local. I've forgotten the lady's name. They mentioned allotments. There seems to be Emily. Yeah, they seem allotment organisations seem to be prime hunting ground for potential volunteers. So all sorts of people we could contact. And maybe we'd like to focus on these as our North London species of most interest. Adders with their decline, great crested newts given their status and their numbers. And what's ashamed to say, I didn't know was some excellent work going on with toads. So coordinating crossings, coordinating and supporting through ARG activities, that project and that work, I think is all to the good, really, given the dire situation. There's a few interesting non-native populations in North London that we might want to think about too. They're often exciting public engagement opportunities. Amphibian snakes and the odd wall lizard populations that crop up. We just immediately north of the M25, we've got midwife toads as well in Hertfordshire and then north to Bedfordshire, as I'm sure you all know. So let me know what you think about these. As I was thinking with my Hertfordshire head on, but for North London, just as a rough plan. And if anybody wants to be involved in a sort of North London planning group, let me know. Get some events going, get a program of events. They're likely to be online at the moment, and there's no reason why they can't be anyway, even after the world returns to some sort of normal. I'll coordinate with Bedfordshire, with Essex colleagues, and if I can have suggestions from people who know the area well or who may be doing projects, some site visits north of the Thames would be great. And as I said, allotments. There seem to be a load of people who'd be ripe for partnership if they could be approached. So that might be some form of way forward. However, I was thinking a little bit about why maybe London ARG, because I've been sort of on the fringes of it for these discussions for a few years, as I imagine a few people have. And I think it's probably useful to think about two things in particular. The first is why it hasn't worked so far. And the last, which I'll come to in a minute, is some sort of evaluation strategy. How do we know that what we're going to do there is effective and is achieving what we want to achieve? And that was what led me to thinking about the Clare project revision, because that would be a really good litmus, a really good gauge of how effective we've been. Is the area simply too large? Is it too are there too many conflicting offers from too many different organisations? Can people get involved almost too easily? So there's this lack of coordination. Are we missing something about the nature of London? Are people not there for a long period of time? Are the sort of people who'd be interested? Are we not present on enough platforms that would reach these people? And the train stations were mentioned. It's a great idea, but is there enough social media present? I don't know. So what do we want to achieve, and why have we not been so far? Are we bringing universities on board? Are we bringing students on board? Are we bringing all these people who could benefit at London universities from going out doing a great Christian Youth survey? Maybe we are, maybe we're not. Maybe we're not coming into the M25 area enough with other volunteers to demonstrate stuff. I don't know. So if anyone's got any ideas, say so. Just very, very briefly, because other guys have. We've got a growing number of volunteers who I'm going to formalise through ARG Web, as I really should have done. We've got really good transport links into London, the M1, the A1M, as well as train lines. So we can get in and out. We can run training events for people in North London if they can get to our area pretty easily, and vice versa. And we've also got people who travel in and out, maybe ecologists working London sites already. And we're fairly central to North London. We're right at 12 o'clock on the London clock. So yeah, and this is a rough time plan. Happy to share this to anybody. Start making these contacts. Send out some survey forms if needed. Start looking at site visits and things, even if they're just recce's for later on. And then start some sort of check-in to see how we're doing. Ready for 2022. If anyone thinks that's a good idea or nonsense, or they've got ideas, let me know. And I'd love to see some people who are interested in that area in 1 or 2 months' time, maybe for another one of these. Just get in touch. But I think that's about it for me, Angie.
Hang on. Okay, good. Thanks very much, Dave. Well, Dave has kindly stepped up and offered to coordinate LARG moving forward, and is well placed, as he said, to coordinate with Surrey, Kent and Essex, who will be the main ARGs, I think. So I think the next step is, she says, don't all step back, but is to sort of compile a list of people who are interested, and what their interest is, maybe where they live. I mean, we're mindful of data protection, so we don't need to know your exact address, but if you could indicate where in London you are and whether you've got any particularly special interests, like there's a park you like to walk in, or an allotment you dig, or you absolutely love toads, or you're desperate to see a grass snake. So those sorts of information would help us to build up a picture of the group. Now, I'm not going to suggest we all shout out now, because we've got 30 people on the call and it's a bit chaotic. So what I'm going to suggest is, when I emailed you the link, it was from info@arguk.org. So if you could email back to info@arguk.org, so if you're interested, because you don't have to, you might think, well, actually, they're rather a boring lot, I shall go off and talk to the birders or the butterfly people. But I mean, if you're still keen to be involved with amphibians and reptiles, and I mean, we're not expecting lifelong passion, you could dip your toe in the water, or you can do as much or as little as you like. You can sit in the armchair and watch the records roll in, or you could be out there doing whatever. So if you email me back on info@arguk.org, then as long as you're happy and you've indicated that, I can pass the information on to Dave, and then we can start to pull together some sort of picture of who's interested. Ideally, we'd put it on ARG Web, as Dave and Steve have already said, so that you then will get an email giving you access to the online portal that Steve showed earlier, and we can start to move forward. And I think Dave's plan, it is lockdown, it is not a great time to be having groups of people out and about, but it's a good time to think and to reflect and to decide and to plan. So I think we then aim, as Dave says, we're now end of January, maybe end of March, we could have another meeting with the ones who are really, really keen, and we can start to plan out some events or tasks or activities. If people are happy. Not everyone I can see, so the ones I can see, you have to just nod sagely. Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, I'm feeling really encouraged, actually. I was afeared that there was nobody in London interested, but clearly we were all wrong. You're all there. You just needed to be asked. So does anyone, now is the moment, if anybody got a question? I don't know. Oh, we've got chat. I could look at chat. Oh, okay. Ealing Wildlife Group, very willing to get involved, loads of volunteers wanting to get stuck into activities, training opportunities. So that's a fantastic, fantastic start. I lived in Ealing once, it was a long time ago. I worked at Kew Gardens, so yeah, that was pretty cool. Good. Well, okay. I feel we've sort of run our course with this now. Does anyone have anything to say? Anyone? This is your.
I do a bit, Angie. There's. It seems there's a couple of ways maybe to go here. I think what London needs is a single point of contact, because even with the other ARGs helping out, I'm just looking at the Vice County map. Of course, none of us cover Middlesex, which the old Middlesex Vice County, which is a big chunk of London. So there's a big gap in the northwest.
So that's an interesting point, Steve, because I work now for the Herts and Middlesex Wildlife Trust, and we have exactly this issue. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Yeah.
No, so although the ARGs can offer, the surrounding ARGs can offer an awful lot of help and support, that's not helping establish a London ARG, is it? Necessarily. We still need a point of contact really in London, someone who'll accept that support and try to grow an embryonic London ARG. That'll be ideal solution, wouldn't it, for us?
Well, that's why we're going to get Dave has kindly offered to be that initial contact.
There was one, wasn't there? Was it Sam?
Yeah, Sam Ho.
Yeah, so there was one. I had a conversation with her, and I'm hoping that sooner or later another Sam will emerge, and we can, pass it over there. But for the interim, we haven't got that person, or that group. They might come out of a university, I guess. They could anywhere, but there's a lot of people in London, and the fact that no one's emerged is probably at the heart of this issue.
We've got Linda, actually. Linda has spoken earlier. Linda.
Yeah. But I'm old, flaky, and I hate people, so I'm really not.
You're not describing me, not yourself.
Steve, you're wonderful.
I'm not very sociable.
Yeah, but you're a whiz with the internet, and the ARG web is just fabulous. It really is.
I think Linda has always been, even when the group's been in the doldrums, Linda's always been there. I have to give her credit for sticking with it. So although she's not keen to be chair, I would suggest that if there was a committee formed, Dave, that Linda would be a very good person to have on side.
Yeah, well, yeah, of course.
Don't escape that easily.
I mean, just going back to what I was saying about ARGs living and dying by the activities they can provide, I suspect that was the issue with London, because getting around London is actually bloody easy. The travel infrastructure is quite good, but I'm not sure there was that much going on within London. If people wanted to get out and see, certainly some of the more exotic amphibians and reptiles, they'd come to some of the neighbouring ARGs. I think one of the reasons that Surrey's done so well is we've got the London catchment area, and we've got the habitat that supports all our native reptiles and amphibians, apart from the bullfrog, the northern bullfrog. We've got plenty of southern bullfrogs. So I think that shouldn't need be the case. I think if something like ARG Web was adopted, certainly ponds, waterways, London's full of them, and it's got these pockets of reptile activity. It just needs someone to be able, directly interested people, to the useful sites, and I think it should succeed, London. Just from the numbers game. There's just, you know, we've got 9 million people as a catchment area there. You're going to get enough people to support an ARG. It's infeasible to think otherwise.
I think you're right, Stephen. I think it's got to be a task-focused one. It's not going to be, it's, as you say, if people want to go and see nice habitat, so to speak, they'll go out into the nearby countryside where they can see much more easily. So it's a task-focused, volunteer-focused, conservation-focused ARG. Is that what you're saying?
I'm just saying that activity doesn't really matter what it is. I think there's a lot of scope for surveying of waterways in London, and garden type habitats as well. And also you've got the Royal Parks. There's lots of potential to get the ball rolling, I think. But unless it's organised to some degree, people will join expecting to have their hand held, and they won't feel that that need has been necessarily satisfied, and they'll get bored and wander off. What the advantage we found of ArgWeb is that someone can be on the east of the county. I might never actually met them personally, but I still have the ability to say, look, we've got these ponds near you. Would you fancy going out? You know, here's what a habitat suitability index is for great crested newts. Would you mind going have a look and report back what you think about this pond? So I can virtually interact with people right across the county, and they're all feeding back into the greater conservation effort, and they feel like they're doing some good. And that's what people want to do. They want to see animals and feel they're doing good. If you tick those two boxes off, you've got an ARG that's on the right tracks, I think.
Angie,
Well,
sorry.
next meeting. Oh.
Sorry, Angie. Could I just chip in there on the garden front? So Crag has had a really strong relationship with Kent Wildlife Trust through, they've got a very strong volunteer lady there, Maureen, who has a good network of volunteers that go around encouraging wildlife in gardens. And I would go what Steve was saying, there's a lot of waterways. I would guess there's an awful lot of gardens. And I wondered if there's like a garden group within any of the groups within the London area that perhaps ARG could contact to see what if they're doing anything for reptiles and amphibians within their organisation.
Well, we've had a contact from South Croydon from Bill, who actually did email Dave and me. I've seen an email from him. I mean, maybe the way round it is to say we could do a London garden herp watch or something like that, Dave. What do you think?
I think both Steves have made excellent points. I think if we go borough by borough and do a Google, we will find all sorts of groups doing all sorts of activities already that we can work alongside and support. We can coordinate activities, or we can get a program together from the summer into next spring if necessary, supplemented by online stuff. It's been hugely successful for London Natural History Society. There's bound to be a lot out there. I'm happy to contact London Wildlife Trust if people haven't got in the north. But I think that's what it just needs, a trawl of see who's doing what and start coordinating that and have something we can really offer.
And are we okay with Emily, come back. Because obviously you're doing quite a lot in London as well, so it'd be quite helpful if we could coordinate across with what you're doing.
Pop Dave a message,
She's got my number.
Okay, because I think that would also be really good, because if there's an actual project with funded persons on it, that really does strengthen.
I mean, even just that, as our first task, certainly in that sort of north half, we're helping toads. We've been set up because rejuvenate, because there's a need for toads conservation and other things off the back of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think it goes hand in hand. The fact that the project I work on is grant funded means I get short periods of time in one place and then I'm off to another bit. And it means you get people that are willing to do more, but I just can't be there because I'm in another borough. So by all means, this should hopefully, all the people that we speak to can continue, and the populations will flourish.
And Angie, I would say, amphibians frogs and toads and newts in garden ponds or in your local pond down the common, all that, kids just love those. And it's that PR sort of push that's got to sort of perhaps happen, and that may help things sort of thing along.
Well, it may be people out within this group that have a sort of ideas about how to go about doing that PR. There's also things like Escalapian snakes along the back of Regent's Park Canal. I mean, no one's mentioned that, but certainly if I lived in London, I'd probably be there every Sunday peering.
I mean, that's nice. And Will Atkins or somebody I'm sure we could get to do a walk and a talk, or even or an online one. But you know, in the spirit of getting their hands dirty, getting involved with stuff, there's not an awful lot they can do with Escalapian snakes. I think Steve's suggestion about getting out in your back garden with a torch and just sending in data and actually taking part, or you know, seeing how habitat improvements in your garden have an impact. I think that's probably got much more longevity than. Yeah.
And the Escalapians are very bitey.
Well, Linda.
They bite like a sewing machine.
Linda.
Yeah, can I just say that one of the things that I find for me quite works nicely, and that I would like to roll out a little bit more, but I'm worried about insurance and things, is that I tend to do a fair bit around Surbiton and that sort of area. And they are urban ponds in parks and things like that. And I have a couple of local people that come out with me. And in the evening after dark, go out with a torch and have a look at what is in these quite built up areas, these ponds in quite built up areas. And they're absolutely teeming with common newts and things like that. And I would like to, be able to say to people, oh, if you want to have a look in your local pond after dark and see if there's anything in there, then I will come along with my torch and we can have a walk around the park. And they generally tend to be sort of won over and amazed at what's there. But I'm always concerned that I'm convinced that somebody will break their leg or something and I will be held responsible. So that bit bothers me greatly.
We have the insurance. As long as you've got the risk assessment filled out, we have the insurance. I mean, that's what the insurance is for. We would say like no lone working, and we would suggest during COVID that you can only have a maximum of 2. But that's on our website. We've got all the risk assessments. So as long as you're within the risk assessment, then you're covered. London insurance would cover you. And all our affiliated ARGs have that insurance cover.
And then you're covered under the SARG version of that, absolutely. Anyway, so you got full. I think is it 5 million? Is it liability, Ange?
I think it's one is 5 million, one's 10 million. I think the employer liability is 10 million actually, but yeah, we've got 5 million of public liability cover.
Yeah.
So Linda, you could go. I mean, the one thing is dragons in your garden. Let's go on a dragon hunt. Kids would love this. Yes, hunt for dragons in your local pond. That sort of PRE type thing should go quite well, I would have thought.
Yeah, just sort of say
get out of COVID.
Yeah, have you got a local? Do you want to see what's in your local park in after dark or something?
But then again, the issue we'll come to too soon is that there are loads and loads of these ponds. There are loads and loads and loads, and actually running events at these. It comes back to Steve's point about hand-holding. So we are going to need sort of coordination, especially if insurance becomes a concern. Other people who are covered who are going to lead these across these boroughs, because there's a lot of people. I think in the early days, at least, what do people think? Is that worrying too much?
Well, Dave, I was thinking. I mean, so the RSPB are about to do their big garden watch. Now, it had to start somewhere. It didn't start with 500,000 people, but you could, across London, could you organise a dragon hunt next year, and look for toads or frogs in your pond,
we've got in your pond. We have got.
But again, and this comes back to the point I was making in the little presentation, is this dilution of effort. Becky's just made a very good point to me about the BTO Garden Watch, and there's opportunity for people to submit data when they on herps when they're doing their bird watching. If people feel they're already doing that, they're not going to feel the need for a secondary survey. So maybe that's something to think about. People, we don't want to be duplicating what's already going on.
No, but the advantage of Dave is the advantage if you run something like that with a big PR, then you'll find out where all the people are that are interested in herbs in London. So what it becomes is, yes, you're doing the work, but you're really using it to find out where are all the potential London ARG members. And that's the way forward, because if you get people to register, which is presumably what the RSPB do, is they get people to register and they know all these people are interested in birds, and then they get in contact with them. And that would probably be where you find
ZSL at the moment. Have we got anyone there who runs?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we're working with
the Reptile House. Can't there be a poster up? Is it Ben Tapley there now?
Ben, we work with Becky Lawson she's the veterinarian department, and we've also got that very good link with BTO, excellent link with BTO, and someone's mentioned double dragons. I thought that was rather nice, actually, the British Dragonfly Society.
Oh, yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, because in looking into ponds, you're going to see the nymphs. You got a nymph ID, and yeah, I like that. Who came up with that?
Nikki
Nice.
Power. Nikki Power is. I can't see everybody.
Yeah.
Too many people to fit on my screen. How's that? That's pretty cool. Okay, Dave, can I leave it with you? Linda, I think we will continue to follow. But if everybody can email me with their interest now, well, not now this minute, but I mean in the next few days, I can pass all that on to Dave. As long as you're happy, we can start to get our web set up, and then people into some sort of formal structure, and then we can see how people are located, and it may be we've got those focal areas is the word I'm trying to use. And all these suggestions, we've got fabulous suggestions in the chat, which I shall note and look at.
Well, I'll set up a London portal for ARG Web tonight, so there's one set ready.
Lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you, everyone. That's great.
Yeah, well done, Angie.
That's our end slide. So thank you, everyone, for coming along. Email me, as I say, as a first stop, and then we will start to get things going, get you on the system and take it from there. But I think so inspired by all the chat. I'm really inspired. I think there's so much potential. I think you're fantastic, all of you. But 9 million people would be the biggest ARG ever.
Absolutely.
Steady on. Break ARG Web.
Well done, Angie. Another great Angie show. Well done.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, thank you all, and we'll see you all again in a month.
Thanks.
Cheers then. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye.